2010, not to mention his anti-vaccine rhetoric. But one thing that is absolutely not a surprise, RFK's mission in this campaign is and always was to help elect Donald Trump. That's it. Because how else can you explain this?
Don't you want a president who's going to protect America's freedoms and who is going to protect us against totalitarianism? And I want to ask you again, don't you want a safe environment for your children?
Yeah, those are all qualities we want in our president. None of the qualities that Donald Trump possesses. But still, RFK Jr. went to Glendale, Arizona tonight, where Kamala Harris and Tim Walz recently blew the roof off, to tell people that the guy who brags about overturning Roe v. Wade is a defender of personal freedom. The guy enthralled to dictators who tried to literally overturn an election are going to protect us from dictatorship. That's the same guy who said he wants to be a dictator just for a day, because that's how dictatorship works, right? You give it up. Members of the Kennedy family have publicly denounced RFK's decision to run and his endorsement of Donald Trump. And today, the Robert Kennedy family issued this statement. We believe in Harris and Walz. Our brother Bobby's decision to endorse Trump today is a betrayal of the values that our father and our family hold dear. It is a sad ending to a sad story, end quote. In a statement, the Democratic National Committee said, quote, the more voters learned about RFK Jr., the less they liked him. Donald Trump isn't earning an endorsement that's going to help build support. He's inheriting the baggage of a failed fringe candidate. Good riddance, end quote. 29 million people tuned in to watch Vice President Harris accept her party's nomination last night, according to Nielsen data. That is the most watched night of either convention. The joy over Vice President Harris and Governor Tim Walz was on full display on all four nights. And, of course, that joy caused Donald Trump to spiral, both on social media and live on Fox. It was during Trump's DNC meltdown when Fox anchors struggled to end his 10-minute phone call.
They threw Joe Biden out of the party.
And that's why we saw a different night tonight.
Mr. President, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate that live feedback.
Nice effort from them. Last night, Kamala Harris warned voters of the consequences of having that unserious man back in office.
In many ways, Donald Trump is an unserious man. But the consequences of putting Donald Trump back in the White House are extremely serious. Consider not only the chaos and calamity when he was in office, but also the gravity of what has happened since he lost the last election. Donald Trump tried to throw away your votes. When he failed, he sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol, where they assaulted law enforcement officers. When politicians in his own party begged him to call off the mob and send help, he did the opposite. He fanned the flames. And now, for an entirely different set of crimes, he was found guilty of fraud by a jury of everyday Americans and separately found liable for committing sexual abuse.
Today, Vice President Harris and Governor Walz took a break from packing arenas. They had no campaign events, but the Harris campaign released this new ad today.
Here's a few things I believe. Middle-class families, like the one I grew up in, they want common sense solutions. You want lower prices and lower taxes. I believe you want to just not get by, but you want to get ahead. We must create an opportunity economy where everyone has a chance to get a car loan, buy a home, start a business. But most of all, that instead of being focused on the politics of the past, we need to be thinking about the future. I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Joining us now, Stuart Stevens, veteran of 5 Republican presidential campaigns, senior advisor at the Lincoln Project, author of The Conspiracy to End America, 5 Ways My Old Party is Driving Our Democracy to Autocracy. Stuart, we have to dispense of this piece of news because it's a piece of news, right? RFK Jr. leaving the race, endorsing Donald Trump, bear cubs, brainworms, all of it. Okay, what do you make of it? Because he was an unserious man, too, sadly, because he's got a great family legacy, and he could have been a serious guy, but he chose to be an unserious guy. He was never going to be president. He still carried on about how the fact that he might actually still be president of the United States. It's a lot of BS. But what do you make of this whole development?
Well, you know, Donald Trump objects to being called weird. So what does he do? He picks J.D. Vance, who seems to have been made at a replicant factory on Friday afternoon when they were trying to get off of work. And then he picks, you know, he goes and takes this endorsement from, you know, one of the sadder figures in American public life, a guy who clearly is just broken. But, you know, the first time, think about it, you have two candidates that are supporting Putin, two candidates who would like to end the war in Ukraine so that Russia could take Ukraine. And you have two candidates who are against any mandatory vaccines in schools. So that's the pro-polio group. I mean, it is just as nutty as it can be, and it will continue to dismay me that other members of my former party don't call it out. It's just crazy.
Well, there was this, you know, the campaign and his running mate said this thing about how they were going to draw votes from everybody, but what they realized is that they weren't going to draw any votes from Biden at the time, and now Kamala. Of course not. They're conspiracy theorists. It's a very narrow band. The Democratic Party came out and put a statement out saying it's not going to get Donald Trump more votes, and I kind of agree with that. He's got that locked up. Like, you don't need the guy, the conspiracy theorist, to get you more votes if you're Donald Trump. You've actually got that constituency locked up well.
Yeah, and the dirty little secrets of endorsements is that they rarely, if ever, matter. Nobody really cares, and I say that as someone who spent, you know, a good part of my life trying to get people to endorse a candidate I was working for, but it never really matters. It doesn't change a race, and this won't change the race. What's fascinating about the Trump campaign is it's rare that you see a campaign, basically it's having like a nervous breakdown in public. It has no idea what to do, and it's flailing around. And I don't know how they get out of this, because they don't really have a compelling message that Donald Trump could articulate. I don't think this race is going to be on a left-right axis.
No.
I think it's fine to talk about the economy. I think the Harris campaign is doing all the right stuff. But at the end of the day, like 2022, this isn't going to be about inflation or gas prices. This is going to be about Donald Trump.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Here's a question. I kind of agree with you about endorsements. I'm always fascinated. A newspaper that's always endorsed a Democrat comes out and endorses the Democrat. A newspaper that's always endorsed a Republican. And once in a while that breaks. But I agree with you. I'm not going to make my decision based on a newspaper. Do the Republicans who come out and speak and endorse Kamala Harris, does it create a permission structure amongst rank-and-file Republicans to say, I'm a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, I don't share a ton of views with Democrats, but there's a permission structure now for me to say, I'm voting for Harris now because of some dangers of Donald Trump. Does that do anything, do you think, or you still think it doesn't mean much?
I think having someone up there saying it out loud is important. And look, you know, I can't tell you how much I admire Jeff Duncan and Adam Kinzinger. These are people that had a lot to lose in politics, rising stars in the party, and they chose to do what the rest of the party should have done, but very few did, which is actually stick by what they said that they believed in. It's tremendously courageous to do this, and so rare in politics. So, yeah, I think it helps. I mean, look, at the Lincoln Project, we focus on these voters.
Yeah.
The soft Republican voters, the soft Dems. These were the last to join Trump in 2016, and usually the last to join are the first to leave in politics. I think that gap is widened a good bit since Dobbs. And just the sort of anger and ugliness that comes from what used to be a conservative movement, the way they attacked Governor Walz's son. This is just crazy. Horrible human beings expressing themselves in public. And it's repugnant to the majority of people.
In fairness to all conservatives, that was BS on every level. That's not a conservative thing to attack people's children who are not involved in politics, or people's children who are neurodivergent. I just don't want to. I don't want to paint Republicans with that brush, because I think a lot of people with common sense thought that was BS.
How many Republicans publicly called him out for doing it?
Yeah, very few.
Very few.
Very few.
And that's what's so disappointing.
Stuart, good to see you as always. I really appreciate you bringing your good perspective to us. Stuart Stevens is a veteran of 5 Republican presidential campaigns, is a senior advisor at the Lincoln Project and the author of The Conspiracy to End America. Joining us now is the Arizona Democratic Senator Eva Birch. Senator Birch, good to see you. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
Arizona, a state that wasn't in focus all this week, but is in focus kind of almost every other week as it comes to the election, because it is truly the battleground. It is truly a swing state. It is truly a place where people have to come to terms with exactly what Stuart just said. It's not a left-right thing in Arizona. I have spent a lot of time in Arizona where a whole lot of Republicans who are very proud of their conservative heritage say, we can't do this. We can't vote for these wackos who say the election wasn't won.
Honestly, that's my dad. Those are my neighbors.
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many voters in Arizona who are persuadable. This is really someone's race to win or lose. And I think it's going to come down to, are we talking about the issues that are important to people in Arizona? That's something that's really going to make the difference in this campaign. We want to know about the border. We want to know about housing. We want to know about healthcare and affordability. These are the things that are important to the people of Arizona, and the messaging will swing the vote.
You know, there are Republicans that Stuart and I were just talking about, some of whom spoke at the Democratic National Convention, some of whom we speak to on the show, one of whom I will speak to later on in the show, who is a deputy chair of the Minnesota Republican Party, who are making the argument that when you put country over party, whether you're Democrat or Republican, when you put country over party, you're actually the patriot that Donald Trump likes to usurp. He likes to talk about the fact that, his group of people are patriots. What I saw this week at the Democratic Convention was a whole bunch of people of every stripe saying, no, actually, we're patriots. Country over party is what makes you a patriot in this country.
That's absolutely right. And there are so many Republicans and moderates and independents who maybe sometimes lean one way or the other, who feel that way. Arizona has always been a state that prides itself on being a state of mavericks, having independent minds and voices, a place where you can have politicians like John McCain. And that's going to continue to be what Arizona looks like into the future. And so speaking to those voters in particular is going to be really critical to see who gets across the finish line in November.
I want you to listen with me to this new Harris campaign ad on the border, because in Arizona, again, not a party thing, there are legitimate concerns about the border. Let's listen to this.
More lies from Donald Trump. The truth? On Kamala Harris's watch, violent crime went down. Her record as district attorney and attorney general? Locking up child abusers, online predators, and violent offenders, and shutting down international drug cartels. Under Donald Trump, a violent crime wave, and Trump ordered MAGA extremists to kill the bipartisan border security bill. Trump just talks tough. Kamala Harris is tough.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
That last part about the border, how does that play in Arizona? Because the fact is, there was a border bill. It was a tough border bill. There are a lot of Democrats who thought it was not an appropriate border bill, but the point is it was a bill that could get done, and it was going to get done in Congress, but for the fact that Donald Trump told folks, don't get it done.
Yeah, the bill was tough, but the bill was also fair. And honestly, even in the Arizona legislature, if I only voted on perfect legislation, I think I would just stay home a lot, because we have to be realistic about that. No one's ever going to feel like we have a perfect piece of legislation. But what it would have done was to add double the detention beds that we have, and to help expedite this asylum seeking process, which can take years, 5 to 7 years.